Now, this is interesting here. Like, this goes to show you how my algorithms are set up right now, right? Everything UFOs is flooding my algorithm all the time. So when I come across stuff that I'm like, this is interesting. I haven't really heard Minnesota be mentioned in any UFO sightings or cases or nothing like that. So definitely want to look into this one, right? This video is titled, "This Minnesota UFO sighting is one of the strangest cases in UFO history." Shout out to y'all who lived through this time, was alive when this incident happened and can recall. I want to know what happened. Let's check this out.
Welcome to another episode of Destination Declassified, the channel that continues to unmask the great conspiracies and UFO mysteries of our time. In the age of Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, information and reports of unidentified phenomena can often be misconstrued, or at worst, not taken seriously enough. Anyone can fake a so-called sighting or paranormal experience, especially if the event is conveniently caught on tape. To try and decipher the truth from the fictitious can be a laborious task, one that many people soon become frustrated with. It is often said that the most candid and believable stories are told by those who wish to remain humble or out of the spotlight. Whether it be war veterans, emergency service personnel, or even a witness to a UFO. If this statement is true by its own admission, then it's worth investigating the strange case which occurred in the summer of 1979, involving a small-town deputy sheriff named Val Johnson. What exactly happened in the early hours of August 27th to the deputy sheriff? What makes Johnson's story so authentic that it remains in the public eye to this very day? And what subsequent events have changed the way we look at UFOs, as well as the witnesses that decide to come forward? Let us go back to 1979 and dissect the mysterious Minnesota UFO incident. Despite the mass reach of the internet, there is not much known or recorded with regard to Val Johnson, other than the story we are about to investigate. What we do know is that in August 1979, Johnson was deputy sheriff of Marshall County, the small northwestern region of the US state of Minnesota, which has become renowned for the incident that occurred over 40 years ago. Before the event that changed the life of Deputy Johnson and Marshall County itself, it all started with a routine inspection by Johnson as he drove his patrol car through the isolated terrain of County Highway 5, 10 miles west of the city of Stephen. At 1:40 a.m. on the morning of August 27th, the deputy noticed a brightly lit orb in the distance, which was split between two trees and extremely out of place considering the desolate area. Curious as to what this illumination was, Johnson turned left onto State Highway 220 to make his approach.
Now, normally I'd be like, see, your curiosity is what gets you every single time, bro. Sometimes we gotta leave well enough alone, but he's trained to be investigative. He's a deputy. It's in him to do that. So I can respect that coming from him. But for most people, y'all need to just continue on with your plan, what you was about to do. Don't veer off and go be investigative reporter person, but I get it for him.
Keeping his eyes firmly on the entity, which was approximately 2.5 miles south of his position, the deputy began to rack his brains as to what the light could be. As he drew closer, Johnson settled on the assumption that it could in fact be drug smugglers who had flown across the Canadian border with the intention of trekking across the uninhabited region under the cover of darkness. With the light emitting very close to the ground, Johnson was sure that it was a small plane that had crash landed, and so readied himself for whatever was about to happen. However, nothing could prepare him for what did. "I noticed a very bright, brilliant light, 8 to 12 inches in diameter, 3 to 4 feet off the ground," Johnson said in a taped police interview. The light itself suddenly flew directly towards the squad car, engulfing the exterior and penetrating the windshield as it struck the glass with an almighty force. The apparent assault on the police car was so effective that Johnson lost consciousness immediately after impact and remained unconscious for a further 39 minutes. his 1977 Ford LTD squad car lying sideways in a ditch on the side of the road. When he managed to rally himself back to full awareness, Deputy Johnson made a frantic officer in need of help 1088 emergency radio call to report the incident. Still disorientated from the blast, Bell spoke with general anxiety and worry when the operators took the call. A transcript of the call was released as follows. Operator, 407, what is your condition? Deputy Johnson, I don't know, something just hit my car. I don't know how to explain it, strange. Those first on the scene reported that the car was indeed lying within a roadside ditch. Shattered glass was also noticed. Approximately 854 feet before the initial skid marks on the tarmac. Due to the strange display of the car, grounds and surrounding area, a crash technician specialist was called in to provide his expertise and opinion on what may have occurred. The consultant, who worked for Ford themselves, came to the primary conclusion that the damage was unusual, considering the sequence of events that seemed to transpire across the terrain. The squad car sustained in total a dented hood, bent antennas, shattered windshield, a broken headlight and a broken hazard light. The force of the strike was so strong that it was able to send the vehicle across the stretch of highway and therefore required in-depth analysis. After careful examination, the Ford specialist noted that the fractures on the car were made by some type of a blow from outside of the glass by some firm, probably hard object, but with not sufficient force to crush the glass, but enough to bend the glass to the point of breaking it. He also concluded, I have not seen anything like this before. Luckily for Deputy Johnson, he would survive the strike with limited injuries, bruises, fractured teeth, a slight bump on the head and eye irritation, which the attending physician attributed to welder burns, were recorded. Another interesting fact was the time on Johnson's watch and dashboard clock. Both had ticked 14 minutes slow, despite them being correct at the time of the incident. The investigation continued to span over the course of 40 years due to the strange nature and witness testimony by the deputy. Val Johnson was a kind, intelligent and professional deputy who had no known mental afflictions or illnesses, nor did he participate in practical jokes to frighten his colleagues or waste their time. So what could have happened? It wouldn't take long before the story went public, and everyone wanted to know what occurred on that quiet highway, which left his fellow officers and specialists baffled. Johnson was not one to seek attention in any way, and is known to have told reporters that the sudden media attention had caused him and his family a great deal of emotional strain. His house and office at the Sheriff's Department received a constant influx of telephone calls by numerous strangers, reporters, and so-called fellow UFO witnesses. The pressure was beginning to show on Johnson and his wife Rosina that she went on record to tell the readers of the Minneapolis Star that it's completely disrupted our family organization. We have a baby and that takes time. We have one to get off to school and the phone keeps ringing. Johnson decided to remain a deputy for a short while after the night of the incident, before taking up a post as chief of police in the nearby town of Oslo. Despite his quiet demeanor and request for a peaceful existence, the phone continued to ring, with more and more questions, offers, and claimants coming forward. To try and answer the demands, once and for all, Johnson would speak to Barbara Dewey of the Associated Press, and on September 11, 1979, appeared on Good Morning America via the ABC network. Having been run ragged by the whole ordeal, the family decided to move house again, this time to the city of Eau Claire in the neighboring state of Wisconsin. Back in Marshall County, the sheriff's office, led by Sheriff Dennis Breck, continued to carry out their subsequent investigations into the event, attempting to bring closure to the subject and thus fend off the constant media attention. The Air Force and Federal Aviation Agency were brought in to share their findings with the sheriff. Representatives from both institutes confirmed that there was no scheduled aircraft due to fly in the region at the time and date of the blast. Seeking a more obscure opinion, especially for the time, Breck ordered a magnetic testing procedure on the squad car, with assistance from the Central of UFO Studies, based in Evanston, Illinois. This attempt, coupled with an engineering check by those at Honeywell Industries, did little to answer the question as to what had struck the vehicle during the early hours of August 27th. As time wore on, as did the frustration and determination of Sheriff Breck and his team. Unfortunately, the investigation would amount to very little. An accident expert by the name of Mirrodin French from Ford Motor Company had studied the car and its damage for several days. Again, the conclusion was rather vague. However, French was able to ascertain that the cracks along the car and windshield occurred simultaneously, as well as an interesting theory with regards to Johnson's physical ailments. According to the Ford consultant, Johnson's injuries could have had something to do with the visit to the local dentist just a few days prior to the incident on the highway. X-rays were taken of Johnson's teeth as part of the dentist's preparatory requirements for work, which was to be carried out in the near future. The pictures showed the deputy's teeth in fine condition, but a secondary X-ray after the crash showed that the bridges were no longer intact and visibly swollen. It is reported that Johnson claimed that his face, especially his mouth, had been hit with a 400-pound pillow, yet the interior of the car contained little to no damage. By ruling out a stroke as the cause of the injury due to numerous test results, doctors and physicians were left bewildered at how it occurred. With the apparent mystery surrounding the car, terrain, and of Deputy Johnson himself, there was evidently more questions than answers. One of the ufologists on the case, Alan Clark, claimed that Johnson refused to take a polygraph test, as he believed it would only serve to satisfy people's morbid curiosity.
I wouldn't take one either. Because now I feel like they're about to really attack his character, and sometimes those tests, they can go any way that they want them to go. If they want them to make you look crazy. If they, you know what I mean? Like, those tests, what do they prove? Are they admissible in court? Like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't somebody who's, this dude is already shown he doesn't want the public spotlight. He's not looking for it. He's not running to have these interviews. He's not running to sit down with whoever the popular news anchor is at the time to get his story out there. He's not trying to be on the front of the newspaper or the cover of a magazine. He's not. His family is telling y'all to leave them alone. I bet they're almost, they at that time they were so mad that they even had to report it. I bet he mad he even veered off his path to follow those lights. And then you got all these agencies coming in. Agencies that I ain't even heard of or knew that we had, even back then. Just people just come out the woodwork. Oh, we specialize in ufology on this. And we specialize in this. And we can run data and that. Whoa. I thought nobody believed. But yet we have all these different agencies. Isn't that interesting? Doesn't that seem, I don't know, a bit strange to y'all? Maybe it's just me. But that seems rather odd. I feel for this dude right here, man. And they won't say it, but that's probably why he went to a different agency or department. You know what I mean? Another one.
Test, as he believed it would only serve to satisfy people's morbid curiosity. In 1982, Johnson was hired by the Rose Police Department of Minnesota. Unfortunately, he would lose his job a mere 12 months later due to an argument over funding. From there, he took a less pressured job as a security guard at Twin Cities Mall, as well as a customer service operator at 3M. Staying away from the limelight and fanatics from the UFO and conspiracy communities, Johnson would look on as books, TV shows, and continuous investigations were broadcast and conducted at the scene and surrounding areas of Marshall County. In 1983, author and UFO skeptic Philip Klass stated in his book, UFOs the Public Deceived, that Johnson had deliberately damaged his patrol car, and that the whole incident was an elaborate hoax. Gossip within the town of Warren brought national coverage to the area, as well as the Historical Society, who preserved the Ford vehicle itself, or UFO car, as it's now become known, as an attraction for people to visit.
So I'm guessing now they're saying that the story is he went to the dentist and he wrecked his car for what reason? What was he gaining out of out of that. Maybe he got into a wreck and instead of him getting in trouble for it, he blamed UFOs so he wouldn't get in trouble for wrecking his car down that street or whatever. That's what this is about now. They would have probably been able to pick up on that, right? But all of them running tests couldn't figure it out. So what you gonna say, his head hit the? That's far. That don't make no sense. Like, I don't understand what conclusion they're trying to draw other than you may have to take this guy's word for it and figure out what he saw or what happened or what caused this.
And so the question still remained. What happened to Deputy Sheriff Val Johnson on the morning of August 27th, 1979? In 2015, Deputy Dennis Breck succumbed to the realization that the case may never be solved by stating, "This didn't seem to be any airplane. It was way faster than something like that," and concluded, "We do believe that our deputy had an encounter with something that we haven't been able to explain yet." No one has ever been able to answer the question or provide substantial evidence to prove or disprove the event. In 2019, the residents of Warren decided to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Johnson's UFO encounter. Live music, public speakers, and an alien costume contest were conducted, as was a dramatic reenactment of Johnson's vision and distressed radio call. Interestingly, it was reported that just 2 days after the occurrence on the highway that morning, another motorist who was driving across county in South Dakota was also struck by a bright, luminous object. Russ Johnson does not only share the surname of the deputy, but almost the exact same story as it occurred. Mr. Johnson maintains that he was not aware of the incident that befell the deputy and was not looking for media attention. Another interesting and important note is that the ball of light that struck the deputy has since been classed as a CE2 in relation to the Hynek scale. As discussed before on this channel, Dr. J. Allen Hynek was an American astronomer, professor, and ufologist who generated a table in which UFO and extraterrestrial encounters were recorded and scored via a numbered scale in relation to their proximity. CE2 relates to a close encounter of the second kind, its official description being attributed to a UFO event in which a physical effect is alleged, either interference in the functioning of a vehicle or electronic device, animals reacting, a psychological effect such as paralysis, or heat and discomfort in the witness, or some physical trace like impressions in the ground, scorched or otherwise affected vegetation, or a chemical trace. Unfortunately, the case remains open and shows no signs of being resolved. So whatever happened to Deputy Val Johnson? Researchers found it extremely hard to track him down. When they did, some felt he was still traumatized and haunted by what had happened that morning all those years ago. Johnson is now in his 70s, retired, and still resides with his wife in Wisconsin, enjoying the occasional visit from his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Perhaps the most surprising thing to take from this story is that Johnson never believed or said that what he saw that morning was of extraterrestrial intelligence or origin. If not a UFO, then what could it possibly have been? I guess we'll never know. In today's technological world, with all its fake videos, testimonies, and unbelievable encounters, it is certainly worth listening to those who are most reliant to tell their story. The great mystery surrounding unidentified flying objects, aliens, and the enigma that is the cosmos continues to spark debate and conversation. Perhaps we need to take a step back and give credence to those who are not seeking credibility, fame, or money. This may be where the truth really lies. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Destination Declassified.
Americans have been making contact with UFOs before there even was an America. In 1639, 3 prominent Puritans living in Boston were rowboating in a swamp and noticed a glowing green light in the sky. The light came from above, then settled on the shoreline and turned into the strangest thing. One witness described the being like this: when it ran, it was fast as an arrow and contracted into a figure of a swine, calling out in a most dreadful manner, "Boy, boy, come away, come away." And then, like an apparition, it was gone. We've been hearing spooky stories like this for the last 400 years, making headlines and piquing interest in fringe communities. And most kind of write it off as nonsense, like former senior Pentagon official like Luis Elizondo. He didn't think UFOs were real. But that all changed when he was tapped to join an elite aerospace counterintelligence team where he saw things he couldn't believe.
Imagine a technology that can do 600 to 700 G-forces, that can fly at 13,000 miles an hour, that it can evade radar, and that can fly through air and water and possibly space. And, oh, by the way, has no obvious signs of propulsion, no wings, no control surfaces, and yet still can defy the natural effects of Earth's gravity. That's precisely what we're seeing.
In his role in the Aerospace Threat Identification Program, Elizondo says he received droves of reports from the Navy that UFOs were bobbing and weaving through their tight plane formations, zooming around during the drills. He says, quote, they were also performing in ways that far exceeded our technological capabilities. If an adversary like Russia or China had this technology, it would represent a quantum leap beyond anything we have. During his time in the program, Elizondo says he learned about an ultra-secret government legacy program that possesses UFO materials of a non-human origin. What does that mean?
I don't know, but I bet y'all better believe they won't be hiring no more people to come to their facilities and locations now. Like, too many people are starting to come forward. So they got to switch up. They got to change how they're doing things, how they recruit people now. You better believe, bro, the next people they recruit, I actually feel bad for them, man, because what they're going to go through, and if they do decide to come whistleblowers, then they're going to have so many contingencies in place for them. So I feel bad for the next round of people that they're hired to come to those test sites and work on the recovered crafts and to see the biologics and stuff. I feel sorry for them.
And why doesn't the government come clean about what they know? Are we alone in this universe or not? Author of the new book, Imminent, Luis Elizondo himself joins me now. So
Thank you very much.
Of course, welcome to Jesse Waters Primetime. People always say, well, what proof do you have? And what would you say?
Sure. Well, it's not what proof I have. It's what proof the United States government has and has had for quite some time. I think people would be shocked to know that the U.S. government has had many UFO or UAP, now we call them, programs in the past and continue to have. And it's only been recently, I think, because of the veil of stigma and taboo is beginning to decrease, that elements within the U.S. government are now actually coming forward and having the conversation with Congress, with the executive branch, and the American people.
What do we know about the aliens? We all have seen the images of what look like drones or UFOs, whatever. But what about the little green guys? What do we know about those guys?
Sure. Well, what our focus was primarily, mine was on the nuts and bolts of vehicles that were performing in ways that could, frankly, outperform anything that we had in our inventory at the time, and frankly, that we have right now. We're talking about vehicles, as you saw there in the video, that are leaps and bounds ahead of the very, very best capabilities we have, and we're pretty sure adversarial capabilities, and they're being encountered over controlled U.S. airspace and over sensitive military installations, and it appears they may even have the ability to affect our nuclear capabilities.
Ooh.
And so from a national security...
Exactly. You hear how he responded? Ooh, how scary is that? How scary is that? Like, constantly we're being reminded how important it is we figure out what's going on here. What are they? Is it this? This is important. That should be a reminder right there how important this is.
Security perspective, you know, this isn't grandma seeing some lights in the backyard. These are trained F-18 fighter pilots. Everybody sees the movie Top Gun. These are real Top Gun pilots that can distinguish the difference between an Su-22, a MiG-25, and an F-16 from 10 miles away. And by the way, make a split-second decision. Do I shoot it down? And oh, by the way, that's also being backed up by gun camera footage and forward-looking infrared and other electro-optical data systems, collection systems, and radar systems. So my old job as a former special agent, if all this information, you've got the same information being reported at the same time, under the same circumstances, at the same place, by several different sword collection capabilities, we'd have no choice but the jury would have to convict. We're well beyond reasonable doubt.
All right. Well, hopefully we're capturing these suckers, reverse engineering them, and then using them against our enemies. That's what I would do. But we'll see what we end up doing in reality. Thank you so much. Everybody go check the book out. Imminent. It's going to be
my honor and privilege. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Thank you.